We're facing a challenge before the end of the year. Certainly by the 15th of January, we will be asked to raise the federal debt limit. And ironically, at the same time, we're being told by Treasury that the federal debt is going up to the point where it's bumping up against the limit. TARP funds are being repaid into the federal Treasury. One of the reasons we haven't had to do the federal debt limit in December is because there have been TARP funds coming back in, exactly as many of the people who were involved in TARP said they would. And as these monies come back in and as they pay down the national debt, they would delay the time when we have to raise the national debt limit. But no, the president is saying, well, we didn't really mean it when we said this was temporary asset relief program. Temporary relief. No, Congress may have appropriated it for a temporary relief with the understanding that it would be paid back and the temporary problem would go away. But we in the administration are smarter than Congress. We are smarter than those who look at the impact on the national debt, and we think the funds as they come back in, instead of paying down the debt, should be spent so that we can bump up against the debt limit, have that problem to deal with in January. We see a lot of smoke and mirrors with respect to the budget process around here. This is as big an example of a smoke and mirror, or if you prefer, bait and switch kind of situation as we have seen in Washington. He wants to take money that is being paid back specifically for the purpose of paying down the debt as it was established that was what would be done when this program was created. And he's saying, no, I'm going to take the money and shift it over elsewhere, and I'm going to start to spend it again as if it were not for a temporary program, but it was just a permanent appropriation on the part of Congress. By the time we litigated that, I think we would win it in the Supreme Court, but that would be enough years away that the money would be long gone anyway. So the president's going to get away with it unless we can terminate TARP. And that's the motive behind what Senator Thune and Senator Vitter and I are trying to do. TARP was always to be reviewed at the end of this year to see if it should be renewed. We can review it. We can make a clear case that it should not be renewed. And the president is sliding through on this one. We need to do our best to hold his feet to the fire and make the administration do what the Congress always intended it would do at the time this program was passed.
How would this differ from the bill back in June that dealt with increasing deposit insurance and the Hope for Homeowners Act, where they rescinded some of the authority and then they used some of that, it was like $1.3 billion they rescinded in authority? How would...
In TARP authority?
Yeah, TARP authority.
Well, I mean, my assumption is that I opposed that at the time. Well, Bob's the banking committee guy here, so maybe
there's a very significant difference. That came before the Congress would require people to vote on it. That would put people on record as to where they stood, for or against. This is taking money that was by law, we thought, coming into the Treasury, and therefore, if it's going to go out again, would require a congressional act and appropriation, as that would require. But no, the president's saying, no, this is money I can recycle forever without ever having to go to Congress. That's the fundamental difference between a congressional act where those of us who are elected are on the record as being for or against, and a legislative act where the president, in many ways, is usurping the power of the purse that's outlined for the Congress under the Article 1 of the Constitution.
Would it be appropriate to use it for small business loans, as some are indicating?
As I understand TARP, no. As I understand TARP, it's for troubled assets to deal with a significant problem. Once the problem is dealt with and the assets are sold, the funds that come as a result of the sale of those assets go to deal with the debt. Then if you want to deal with small business, come ask Congress for authorization to do that in a formal piece of legislation. Don't try to mix executive power and the legislative power of the purse.
Would it be difficult politically to oppose something like that, expanding small business loans at a time?
Show me the details of the bill and I'll tell you whether I'll oppose or support it.
Honestly,
the president talked about the tax, the elimination of the capital gains tax for small businesses, and Republicans have been talking about cutting that tax for years. Is that a proposal you get behind?
I don't know the details of that, and I'll certainly be looking at it, but certainly I'd be very open looking at the details of any proposal to lessen the burden on small business and lessen capital gains.
Yeah, I'd say bonus depreciation, you know, I think payroll tax, there are lots of ideas out there that would lessen the tax burden on small businesses and thereby hopefully create an incentive for them to invest and create jobs, none of which are included, of course, in the massive healthcare bill, or really for that matter in the stimulus. Very little, minuscule amounts in the stimulus that actually went toward the job creators, which are small businesses.
Let me point out, having run a small business, capital gains only occur when the business grows and becomes more profitable. And the elimination of the capital gains tax for a business that's struggling is going to have no impact at all. And the second question is, well, we'll eliminate capital gains for small business. Where does small business get its money? In many instances, it comes from venture capitalists who make the decision as to where they're going to spend the money. And if the bill is crafted in such a way to say, oh, you're a large venture capital firm, like Kleiner Perkins, where Al Gore works, you're a large venture capital firm, so since you're a big business, we're not going to allow you to have a zero capital gains tax. It's only the small business. The details of this become absolutely crucial, and it strikes me as a great slogan, which, when you get into the fine print, probably will not look anywhere near as good as the president hopes it will.
Senator Bennett, Leader Hoyer today said that he thought that Congress might redirect as much as $150 billion of the TARP money for other uses. Would there be putting aside your quite legitimate policy disagreements with that, would that be a constitutional problem for Congress to redirect that money?
Well, yeah, as I've said, I see a constitutional issue here because Congress has the right under the Constitution to appropriate money. Congress appropriated money for TARP, or authority for TARP, for a specific purpose, to acquire troubled assets, the payment of which was to go back into the Treasury. So it's very clear to me constitutionally that if you're going to use that money for something else, you come back to the Congress with a request, and the Congress formally appropriates it. And to say, well, we've got 100 billion, 200 billion, whatever it might be, that's a revolving fund that we can use over and over and over again on the grounds that, well, this affects the economy, that affects the economy. TARP was supposed to help take care of the economy, so we'll stretch it for this, that, and the other. No, I think that is a serious constitutional issue. But unfortunately, the constitutional issues get solved in the courts, and by the time this one worked its way up to the Supreme Court, the challenge probably would be so far behind that the money would long since be gone. But one of the things that concerns me the most since I've been to Congress that I did not fully understand before I got here is that the separation of powers between the legislative branch and the executive branch has been eroding for decades, with the power of the purse going downtown more and more and more, with Congress having less and less to say about how the money is spent. And this is an acceleration of that process.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
But if Congress actually took votes,
That'd be different.